Hey, and welcome back to Gaming for Tokens. I'm Marshall, and in this episode we're going to be picking up where we left off to the best of my ability. But first, I wanted to mention that I started up a new playlist of sorts on the channel called Requests. If you haven't seen those, go ahead and check them out. I may, if I remember correctly, put a annotation here for you to click on it and go see. Otherwise, they're up on my channel. You should find them pretty easily. They have a big red banner. But if you have any requests or anything like that, feel free to leave them on the comments to this video or any other video, and I will hopefully see them, and I will add them to the list that I have going for requests. At the moment, there's only 2 or 3 things on there, which is, as you can probably tell from my schedule, my release schedule here, that it's that's going to keep me occupied for a couple months probably. But anyway, that being said, because I took a break from this series, I watched my old video and I read some of my scripts, and I kind of got up to speed where I was, and I did speak in my last video. I said in this video we'd be talking about my effects sequencer script, which we're not going to be doing. We're going to be talking about a little bit of a different script, talking about some more advanced particle-y stuff, and then in the next video we're going to be talking about the particle effects sequencer that I wrote. It's kind of the most complicated bit of all of them. In this one, we're going to be talking about explosions and how to instantiate them, and some of the little minor scripts that I've written that help me with being able to manipulate the lighting and particles in such a way to make them more believable. So yeah, you saw at the end of the last video that I had set up this scene so that I could click on this sphere and explosions would come off of it. It's worth noting that I personally don't like the way that these look all that well. Like, if this was for a game that I was making, I probably wouldn't use these. I'd probably use this setup, but they wouldn't look like this. I would replace these little yellow balls that are yellow and orange balls that are coming off of the sphere with textures or even models, because that's the thing you can do. And the smoke isn't necessarily ideal, but this is the same smoke texture and stuff that I was using in the last video with the candle flame, and the little orange and yellow balls are the default Unity particles, just color augmented to make them more unique, I guess. So yeah, it's worth noting that if you're used to making particle effects, this probably doesn't look very good, but the principles and the scripts and stuff that I'm using here are applicable to more advanced looking particles as well. So yeah. So I wanted to kind of do a breakdown of how this particle system looks, the one you were just seeing spawned everywhere. You'll notice that it looks like a light, and it has several parts underneath the main part of it. So the main object doesn't do anything except for it has the timed destroy script attached to it, which I'll talk about in a minute. Underneath that, I have my smoke, which is the kind of puff of smoke that appears. So again, there is a puff of smoke that appears right here, and it kind of raises up. There's also, you'll notice a bright flare at the base of the explosion, as well as the various bits that fly off with the smoke trails behind them. And yeah, so that's kind of all of it in motion, so you can know what I'm talking about when I talk about each individual part. So there's the smoke puff, there's the fragments, which look like that, and then there's the smoke trails, which are individual of the fragments. And this is a sub-emitter. Sub-emitters are here. I may have talked about them in my first video, but basically the gist is you... how do I describe it? So if I make a new one here, it'll create a new particle system parented to the object, and this will emit. It'll use this particle emitter at every at the location of the original particles. So any particles that this fragments particle system spawns will also be an emitter for both of these particle systems. Hope that makes some sort of sense, but the gist is that when the fragment flies off, it's also spawning smoke particles behind it as it goes. It like leaves behind these other particles. And yeah, so it's easy enough to create a sub-emitter. You just click the little plus sign next to the missing bit. Well, in my case, missing bit. Ugh. I'm gonna actually do a couple undo steps here and see if I can't get to get rid of that missing reference in there. Actually, well, there might be a way to just... Oh, we're good. All right, cool. Anyway, yeah, so that's how you create sub-emitters, and that's all the smoke trails is. The fragments is just, like I said, it's an orange and red, orange to red, sorry, yellow to orange. I believe I go yellow to red. Color over lifetime, yep. It fades out. It's just a normal particle emitter. I have some gravity on it, and I spawn it out of a cone, so they explode up in a random direction. I believe I have that. No, I don't have random direction set, but they effectively explode up, and then gravity takes hold and they fall down. So they're kind of like burning chunks of metal, sort of. If I wanted to, I could bring up this black a little bit and bring back the red, and then they would kind of fade to dark, which may look better. I don't know, it's kind of hard to see them, but the gist is that's what they do. And then the smoke trails are just a very similar particle effect to the smoke in the candle flame exercise. I believe they're even using the exact, they're using the exact same shader. I think they're not, I think they move up over time. That might be a thing. Let's see here. Force over lifetime. Yeah, they go up over time, and then they fade out pretty quickly. So that gives you that effect. Oh, I want to do this. It appears as though I'm not... Okay, yeah, I am starting them at a random rotation. I might want to do this 0 to 180, though. It could look better. There'll be less overlap with it. No. It's still pretty crappy. I just don't like the smoke. I would want to do smoke in a better way. But I need to figure out what that way is first. Anyway. So that's the smoke trails. The next thing we have is an explosion. And this is two parts. You'll see explosion 1 and explosion 2. The first one looks like that. Whoa, let me try that again. It's like a flash of a bunch of different stretched particle effects that kind of act in like a strobing effect, sort of. It's kind of like the initial, like, it's the initial point of explosion. It's like the highlight, the center of it, the core of the explosion. It's just a hemisphere, I think. Yeah, it's a hemisphere emitter. It points down, and that's because of the stretching that I have on it. The length scale is 5. And I believe trying to remember why that is. I don't think that the hemisphere actually matters. I think that I wanted them all to spawn in a point and then go in a direction, and they don't actually move. Well, they kind of move, but not particularly. I don't know. This is kind of a weird particle emitter, but basically the gist is I wanted a flash of spikes of a color, and that's what I got out of this. The size over lifetime decays down. You'll see that they that's them disappearing. And I have color over lifetime. I go from white to orange, and then I fade out. It's so quick, though, because the lifetime of these particles is so fast. It's 0.05 to 0.125. I only wanted it to be a flash, and then they're done. So yeah, that's the explosion 1. Inside of that, I have a light with a light dimmer, and I'll talk about that one in a minute as well. And then the second explosion is just a like cluster of bright. I have this to complement the light. It kind of looks silly on its own, but it's a lot more useful than it shows, is what I'll say. It kind of creates a halo of like a ball of light around my actual point light in here, and then it gives some texture to that light, so it looks like the light is peering through dust. That's really important in explosions, I think, and in a lot of other particle systems and engines and more advanced systems than this. You can do that in different, better ways, but this is kind of my cheap alternative way of doing it. I think it works pretty well. The effect of all of these together is much better than, you know, each individual one, obviously. So you'll see that there's the bright halo of light. There's the point light you see fading out. There's the trails, there's the chunks, there's the smoke that raises up. There's all sorts of stuff. And, yeah. So, talking about the point light and some of the scripts and stuff that I have attached to it. This light dimmer here will actually, here, if I duplicate out this light and I drag it down here and I disable this guy and I take this and I set it to be right on the tip of this thing. And I set it to intensity, delta, speed. Actually, this is the one script that I didn't look at before I started. It's the worst. All right, so let's change that to 1. And we will hit play. I believe... So yeah, this just takes the light and it dims it over time. You'll see that the intensity and the range go at different rates. So I changed the intensity, so the intensity is going down fairly slowly, and then the range is there. It goes down at a different rate because it starts at a higher level. So if I change this range delta speed to 0.25, you'll see that the range will actually go down much slower than the intensity will, and you can kind of see how that looks. So there's the range going down, and the range is still going down even though the intensity is at 0. And likewise, if I change that back to 4 and I change the intensity speed down to like 0.25, you'll see that the intensity will go down much slower than the range does. So then the range kind of creeps in and then it blips out before the intensity is even at 0. The light's gone. So this dimmer script is really, really handy for a number of reasons. You can... first off, there's a destroy on complete checkbox, so you can spawn a light in and then have it fade out. So we can do this. We can say, hey, fade out completely, and then once it's there, it's done, and it deletes the light. Or you cannot, and then you can attach this to a flicker script like we showed in the last video. So if I wanted to say light flicker onto this guy, I can take that and attach it to here. And what this is going to do is the light dimmer now reads the this flicker script, and it will modify the range and intensity to accommodate. You'll see what this looks like here. So we have our flickering like we did before, but it's still dimming down. It's still like it's using both of them to and you'll see that it's kind of pulsing at the bottom down there. That's the result of the flicker. So this is, you'd see the same effect if I set the range and intensity to 0. You'd see the exact same thing happening. See? So, yeah, the dimmer script will let you dim out candles, and my favorite part about this dimmer script is if I say I don't want it to happen automatically, then it'll just flicker, and then I can say grab a bunch of them and then trigger them on an event, like say that I want you to walk into a room and all of the candles like get extinguished, and I play like a sound effect and make it seem like a gust of wind blew out a bunch of candles. I could do that with these scripts. I would just have another one that's an event. It would send message on these light dimmer objects. It would tell them to go, and I would have my gusty hallway of blowing out candlesness. Okay. So that is the light dimmer. The other thing that I avoided talking about was I didn't talk about the FX auto destroy either, but the time to destroy is very simple. So I look at all of my particle effects under here, and I see their lifetime. This one has a lifetime of 3. This one has a lifetime of 5. This one has a lifetime of 1.25 or 0.125, so that's not a big deal. And this one has a lifetime of 0.5. So the longest lifetime on any of these is 5. So I know that after 5 seconds, all of my particles are going to be dead. So I want to set this lifetime to 5. I want, and what this is saying is that after 5 seconds, or what the script does rather, after 5 seconds, it's going to destroy this game object. It's going to clean this up for me automatically. Earlier versions of Unity, I think early, like Unity 3 or Unity, maybe even as far back as Unity 2, the particle effect system actually had a checkbox in this for particle effects. You could just check that box, like destroy on complete, and it would just automatically kill the particle effects after they were finished. Unity 5 doesn't have that for some reason. I'm not exactly sure why. They redid all the particle effects system to a new system called Shuriken, which is what this currently is, and with that went certain features, I think. So it's unfortunate, but yeah, I've scripted this thing up. It's really as simple as it sounds. As soon as it opens up here, we'll take a look. Yeah, this is the entire script. It's just an update function and a timer and a lifetime float. It keeps track of time, and it takes into account time dilation if we want to do that. If we want to change the time scale, we can. But yeah, and then once it's above a certain time, once it's lived long enough, we destroy the game object. It is very straightforward. But this is really, really handy for particle effects, like specifically particle effects that you're going to instantiate and then you expect to disappear. So think like in any first-person shooter, when you shoot like a brick wall, you get that little puff of dust. That's a particle effect that you want to instantiate and then disappear. You want the thing to go away. So this lets you do that. Let's see. The other one that I saw in here was this FX auto destroy. So this is just a more advanced version of what I talked about. This is specifically made for particle effects, particle systems, and it does a lot of fancy math behind the scenes to see like how many times the particle has run, and then you can destroy it after a set number of those. So if you remember correctly, this one is the flare, and I wanted this particle effect to destroy itself after all of the particles had disappeared. So this script is a lot more complicated. You'll see here that there's a lot to it. Granted, a lot of it is commenting, so it's not as intimidating as it sounds. Because I've actually went through and commented all these scripts so I knew what was going on here. The different options we have here are cycle count, timed, and none. And this is the thing that we want to read to know when the thing is dead. Do we want it to be a timed event? Do we want the particle effects to last for 1 second and then go away? Or do we want it to be a cycle count where we set this to maybe 10, and this particle effect will fire 10 times in a row if it is set to loop, which it's not. But if it's set to loop, it'll fire 10 times in a row, and then it'll go away. Do we want it to be a clean shutdown, or do we want it to be a hard shutdown? So the difference between those is a clean shutdown, it'll stop emitting, and then it'll wait for all the particles to naturally decay, and then it'll destroy the particle effect. A hard shutdown just destroys the particle effect and doesn't care if there are already still existing particles. I want to show you an example. Particle system. So we have this particle system here, and we're going to set the duration to be 3, and we're not going to have it loop. So if we do this, it's going to stop emitting right about now, and these particles are still alive in the world. So if we just destroyed the particle effect, here, I'll show you, I'll kind of simulate it. That's what it would look like. where the particles would just pop out of existence, because the particles don't exist independently of the system. They are a part of the system. So if you destroy the system, the particles go with it. Even though the particles should still be alive, they won't be. It will do that. So I can show you this using my FX auto destroy script. All right. So if we say it's a timed thing, we want it to be 3 seconds, and we want it to not clean shutdown. So this thing only has a duration of 3 seconds. So after 3 seconds, it should be done. And that would lead most people to believe that after 3 seconds of emitting, we turn it off and everything. But that's what it looks like. So it doesn't look good, right? You want it to probably be a clean shutdown. So after 3 seconds, we're going to do a clean shutdown. This is what it'll look like with a clean shutdown. So the particle emitter will stop emitting, and then all of the particles will die out, and as soon as the last one dies, it kills the object. It looks a lot more graceful. In a lot of ways, you'd want clean shutdown. In a lot of instances, you'd want clean shutdowns over hard shutdowns, so I've provided that for you. If you want cycles, we can do a 1 second looping system. Actually, let's do 1 second bursts. So we'll do like a 0 rate with a 30 burst. So this is going to look like this. It's going to pulse these different waves of particles. If we do a cycle count of, say, 4, and then and we run that, it's going to allow the particle to be played 4 times. And then it will stop emitting, it'll do a clean shutdown just like we did before, and it'll delete the object. So the gist is that this FX auto destroy script is just a more advanced version of the previous thing, the timed destroy, and it allows for a little bit more control over exactly when and exactly how it looks when the particle effect is destroyed. It's really, really handy for a lot of different effects type things. The reason why I'm not using an FX auto destroy on my base object here, I'm using a time destroy instead, is because I have more than just particle effects in here, and this only reads the system that it is attached to, not the system as a whole. So if I put that script on here, it wouldn't do anything, because this isn't a particle system. This is just a game object that houses a bunch of other ones. I could, in theory, attach that script to every single one of these and spawn each one of them individually, but that wouldn't be very good either, I don't think. So instead, I'd went the simpler route and just said, just kill the thing after a certain amount of time. I mean, I have lights in here, I have sub-emitters and things like that. I don't necessarily want to know when all of the particles in it are dead. I can kind of assume that at 5 seconds they will be, so I will just put it at 5. And because this is a impulse particle effect, that is one that spawns all of its particles from the onset and then doesn't spawn any more over time. Everything in here is a kind of a burst. If you look at the emission on all of these, this is a 5 particle burst. This is a 15 particle burst. This is, I think, the only one that goes over time, and it's smoke trails on fragments, and the fragments are a burst. And as soon as those fragments go away, as soon as the fragments go away, the smoke trails also go away. So I can basically say that these smoke trails are also a burst. The explosion is a burst. The explosion number 2 is also a burst. So because all of these are bursts, I know that on the first frame that it exists, it's going to spawn everything it needs, and then the longest lifetime is going to be 5 seconds of all of those particles. So I know that after 5 seconds, all of those particles that it spawned are going to be gone, and I don't have to worry about that safe shutdown, or what did I call it? The clean shutdown. But in this particular instance, I do want to worry about that clean shutdown, because I don't want it to loop. I don't want it to do anything like that. It's a different situation for different things, and this just gives you more control, but it's a lot more complicated. If that helps you to know why I have two different things that do very similar things. Anyway, so the FX Auto Destroy script is fairly complicated, and I don't really want to get too far into it because I want to talk about something else instead. If we have time at the end, I will talk about how I did all of this code. The reason why I have all of this stuff commented is because I plan on sharing this script bundle with you guys at some point. I don't know if I want to yet. It's kind of a thing that I've started doing, is I don't know that I want to attach any scripts to these videos because I want you guys to learn how to make them instead. So I may, if I have time at the end of this series, the short series on FX stuff, I might go in depth about how I did all this crazy frame or particle counting and stuff like that, and I'll show you guys how I did that. But for now, I want to talk about how I am spawning these particles. I want to talk about how I'm doing this nonsense, because it's actually a little more advanced than it looks. So this is my Click FX spawner, and you'll notice that it keeps track of all of the different effects that I have at a given point in time. So you see that these two lists fully reflect each other pretty well. It has a list of different things that prefabs that I can spawn, and it has hit mask. It has spawn aligned to hit normal, which is what allows it to, like, if I click on this side of the sphere, it'll spawn on the right side of the sphere and go to the right, and if I click on this side, it'll spawn on the left side and go left. That's what that does. If I uncheck that, then it will do something like this. It'll always spawn up, and it'll always so you'll see that the smoke trails and fragments always go up, even if I click the bottom of the sphere. But as soon as I check that box, it'll orient it to the surface that I clicked on. And I'll talk about how I did that in a minute. The max FX is a limiter on how many of these explosions I can have running at a given point in time. This is a performance limiter. So I can only ever have 3 of them, and then it'll wait for them to naturally destroy themselves, and then as soon as that one goes away, I can create more. If I set this to 0 or -1, it's just infinite, and I can spawn as many as I want. There's reasons, performance-wise, why you wouldn't want to do that, right? Having that many particles and that much alpha on screen can really, really tank your frame rate. It can really, really destroy the performance of your game. So, typically speaking, I would probably want to set this to something like 12, or maybe even less. That way I can, see, you can hear me clicking probably. There's a little delay in there while it waits for things to destroy. If I had my, if I had time to add another feature to this, it would be another checkbox below that, or a checkbox below this max FX variable that says, do you want me to remove the oldest effect when I spawn a new one? That way you can constantly keep doing it, but your old effects will pop out of existence. It could be useful for, again, keeping that performance in there, but also letting you spawn as many as you want, sort of. Yeah. So anyway, let us look at it. Let us look at effect spawner. It's pretty straightforward, and I made sure to do a little bit of commenting in here before the video ran. But yeah, like I said, there's our list of our potential things to spawn. There's our hit mask, which shouldn't be any stranger to you guys. The spawn aligned hit normal, the max effects, spawned effects. This is the list of objects that we have spawned and where we're storing them. And then hidden, I have current effects int and a debug message. You may have noticed that when I hit play, up in the top left corner, there's some words that appear. That's kind of a weird thing that I did here. I'll show you. Oh, that didn't work. That sucks. Alright, hang on a second. So I have this cube, and I'm going to create a new prefab from it. And I'm going to disable it. Alright. And then in my my effects spawner here, I'm going to attach that cube. So if I push the left and right arrows on my keyboard, oh, come on. Aha, ha, ha, ha. It will actually show me what object I have currently selected for spawning. And if I click, it will actually spawn these cubes. Now again, I have max effects set to 3, so it only spawns 3 of them. And these things don't ever die over time, so that's a problem. And I also have spawn aligned to hit normal off, so now I can keep spawning cubes, and they keep getting closer to the camera. And this is kind of what I've created, right? So if I wanted to, I could take that, I'm going to reset these. I could take that auto destroy, what is it? Where is it? Oh, time destroy. I could attach that to my cube and say that it only lives for a second. And then when I come in here, that time destroy will actually work on these cubes as well, and it'll, I can keep spawning cubes. I can keep coming forward, but eventually they're going to decay and leave. Yeah. So why I'm showing you this is because I can put multiple things in here to spawn multiple things, and they don't all have to be particle effects either. I can do some really interesting stuff with this if I really wanted to. But I also wanted to show you that the left and right arrows will let me switch between the different things, and I can like spawn a bunch of cubes and then spawn explosions on those cubes and whatever. Like I can do crazy stuff with this. Let's see. So the debug message is the text that you saw in the upper left, and then the current FX is the integer value associated with that selection. So you'll see here that when I get key code right arrow or left arrow, I'm increasing or decreasing this integer value. So I'm changing my selection, and I'm looping it. I want to make sure that if it is less than 0, then it equals the length. So it like goes, if it goes below 0, then it goes to the end of the array. If it goes above the end of the array, then it goes back to 0. So I want to make sure that I'm looping through this list. And that's all that does. We'll pick up on that down here on GUI script, but remember that that's a thing. And then I want to make sure that when I click, we do a raycast out from the camera, and you can do that by doing camera.main screen point to ray, and then you feed it the input mouse position. So what we're saying here is, oh, loud car outside. Screen point to ray takes in a vector 3, and input.mouse position is a vector 3 associated with your position on screen. So if you use screen point to ray, that'll take the and you feed it input.mouse position here, that'll take the location of your cursor and project a raycast out from that location through the camera. And I hope that makes sense. That's a really complicated concept I just realized. But basically what I'm doing is I'm saying wherever my cursor is, I want to raycast out from there. And then I want to go out mathf.infinity, which is forever. I want to go out forever and see if I hit something from the location of my cursor. So from here we see if spawn aligned to normal is checked, and if it isn't, then we just want to spawn the effects that we have selected currently. This spawn effects function is down here, and I will talk about that in a minute. But it takes in the position that we want to spawn at, the object, or the position that we want to spawn at, and the orientation of the object. That's all it is. Alright, so if we do want to spawn aligned to the hit normal, this is the interesting thing. This is the how to rotate the thing based off of what you hit. We want to get a quaternion. Quaternions, I talked about in a previous video, I believe, are just units of rotation. Motorcycle driving past. This is my life. The life of living under a freeway overpass. Anyway, so we want to make a new quaternion that is based off of the hit.normal. Now hit is our raycast hit up here. Just like we've done every single raycast so far, we do the the physics.raycast, but we always do this out hit. That's the information stored from the raycast. That also stores the part of that is the normal that we hit, and a normal is a direction that is kind of the so if you hit a curved object, the orientation that it would bounce off at, it's sort of that. So yeah, this quaternion.from rotation takes in 2 different vector 3s, and it rotates between them. So, and it takes like a rotation value between them. So what we want to do is say we want vector 3.up, which is just our standard up. And I believe if you look at the help text on this, it actually says from direction to direction. Yeah. So vector 3.up is what our object is. That's effectively 0 rotation for what its use. I don't know. For this use, it's 0 rotation. So we want to go from 0 to the direction that we are bouncing off of the object. Hope that makes some sort of sense. And that's going to give us the rotation value that we need to put into our object, because that's going to tell this quaternion is going to now be what we need to rotate the object to be oriented the correct way. That's a really, really complicated thing that I just had to explain. I don't know if I did a very good job. But basically, quaternion.up is 0 rotation. Hit.normal is the rotation that we want to go to, and then this function converts that into a quaternion that we can then use to set the rotation of the object. Yeah. Ugh. All right. But we need to multiply all this by the rotation of the object inherently, because if we say that our particle effects for some reason was created at a 90-degree angle and we need to retain that information, this lets us retain that information. Yeah. Hopefully that makes sense. But this line here is the line that does that for us. This is what does that rotation to the surface of the object. And then just like before, up here we spawn the object, which brings us down into our spawn effects. And I know if you have keen eyes, you will have seen this little cleanup spawn list. We'll talk about that guy in a second. So the spawn effects script, like I said, it just takes a location and a quaternion, and all we do is we make sure that we check the that we don't have too many particle effects. This is where we do that limiter. If the number of particles that we have currently spawned is less than max effects, then we're fine. Or if max effects is less than or equal to 0, because I'm intending for if you have 0 or negative or 0 or less specified there, you intend for it to be infinite. Yeah. So if we don't have too many of these, then we're going to want to instantiate one. So we instantiate one, we save it as a game object, and then we want to make sure that we add this object to the spawned effects list, which is what I'm doing here. So I'm creating a temporary list of game objects, and I'm making sure that it's one bigger, and then I loop through that entire list and I make sure that the lists are the same, and then I set the last one in the list to our new object. I've done this before in a couple other videos. This is basically how I tack something onto the end of a list. In other languages, it's array.add, but in in Unity, this is just how you have to do it. And that's it. That's it for spawning an effect. I already have my location and rotation as given from this bit here from the raycast. So now I'm just feeding that into something to spit out the particle effect at that location with that rotation. The last couple things I have here are the on GUI part, which is this just defines the text in the top left, so it defines that little text box, and you do that with GUI.area. I haven't really talked about GUI stuff yet on this channel, and I don't think I will in this video because this video is already running a little longer than I would have liked. But the gist is, this is how you create a little text box, and I'm making sure that the debug message is set to what the current effect name is. Yeah. Hopefully that makes some sort of sense if you know something about GUI. I encourage you all to dive into it. The GUI stuff in Unity can get kind of messy. It's not very, in my opinion, it's not very well put together. It currently in Unity 5 there's like two versions of it living, and there's like the new UI stuff and there's the old UI stuff, and if you try to use them together, some stuff works but most of it doesn't. So yeah, it's kind of a mess. This is part of the old Unity GUI system, and I'm only using it, so it's fine. But like for most situations, you don't want to use the old GUI stuff anymore. So kind of ignore this, but also know that this is how I did that. That helps at all. And then this final cleaned up spawn list, this guy up here that I said to remember. All this does is it loops through our spawned effects list and sees if the thing is null. It's making sure that there are never any empty spots in that list of spawned objects, right? So yeah, I'm looping through it once to just make sure that I'm looping through the list of effects spawned once and then counting the number that are not null, because the effect is going to destroy itself and become null on its own. So, and I don't know when that's going to happen. So I need to be able to go through every single one of those entries and say, hey, are you null? Hey, are you null? Hey, are you null? And if something responds, yes, I'm null, I need to make sure that I don't include that in my tally of how many are still around. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, if the amount that I tallied is not the same as the amount I think there should be, then I need to create a new temporary list that is equal to the number I counted, and then I need to fill that list with the ones that are still around. So it's pretty straightforward. It's very similar to me adding things. It's just the reverse. I'm just making sure that everything's still there, and then I'm reassembling my list as I need. This is a very, very handy cleanup array script in general. If you're going to be instantiating things and then removing them, but you're going to want to keep track of them while you have them instantiated, it's a really good idea to have something like this in that script. You might be asking yourself, why am I keeping tabs on these things? Well, it could be interesting. It's just an idea. It could be interesting for me to do something like this. Public void flush fx. We'll say for int I equals 0, I less than, what is it? Spawned effects dot length. Whoa. Length I plus plus. So we're going to loop through our list here, and we're going to say that what spawned effects I dot get component. Let's see here. We have our explosion effects here, and we have the timed destroy script, right? See where I'm going with this? We're going to add a little thing here that's it's a public. Come on, I can't type today. Void override, and we're going to feed it a bool, and we're going to call that bool kill. We're going to say if kill, then this, else we will set the timer back to 0. So what this is saying is I want to override my time destroy, but I don't know how I want to override it yet. So if I feed it a bool, that it's so true false. If the bool is true, then I'm going to kill it. If it's false, then I'm just going to reset the timer on it. So this is going to be kind of handy for doing a series of things, but most immediately it is going to allow me to do this. Override true. So this is going to let me cycle through all of my spawned effects, and here I'm gonna do one more thing. If that, else, destroy it. Yes, yes, yes. All right, so I'm looping through my entire all the objects that I have spawned, and I'm going to see if they have their own time destroy object on them. If they don't, then I'm going to just destroy them, and if they do, then I'm going to let that code destroy it for me. The reason why I'm doing it this way is because I can add a series of other ifs in here. I can say if else, if else, if else, for my other types of destroy scripts, like my light dimmer, for example, or my FX auto destroy. Maybe I want to do something with that where I come into here and I destroy effects, for example. So I can say else if spawned effects I dot, oh come on, dot get component this then this dot, why isn't it, it's not auto completing anything, which is scaring me. I think something is mistyped somewhere. Destroy FX true. When I get back in here, I'm gonna get a yeah, I already have a compiler error. Ugh, butts. Right, let's see. If int I equals 0, I less than, spawned effects dot length. Maybe that'll help. Oh, and that's a function too. Oh crap. Crap. Spawned effects. There we go. All right. That should be fine. Now we shouldn't have any of these. Of course there's more errors. What? Spawned effects. Oh, that's why. I didn't capitalize this. Today's just a day of typos for me. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, cool. So now I have this function that I can map to an input, right? So up here at the top, I can copy this because I don't want to have to try and type it again. And we can say if input dot get key up. I want to go up because reasons, I guess. Key code dot escape flush effects. So what this is going to let us do is I can take that cube that we had before and I can increase its lifetime. Sorry, everything's recompiling, so it's taking forever. There we go, to 5. And when we come back in here to our effects, I can spawn a bunch of these and I can hit escape and it pops all of them out of existence. I can also go right to my cube and spawn a bunch of them and hit escape and it will flush all of them from existence. This could be really, really useful for testing my particle effects. That's kind of what this whole system is made for that I'm currently making, so that I can have a way of like starting to like feed particle systems into this system and see how they would instantiate in game. So this isn't necessarily an in-game application, though I suppose it could be. This is more of an application of being able to test particle systems in an in-game fashion. So in a way that you would want them, like, I want to see what this looks like when I shoot a wall. So you'd put your wall shot particle effect in here, and then you'd cycle to it using the numbers, and then you would click and you go, oh, that's what it looks like. Cool. What about at this angle? What about at this angle? What about at this angle? What about straight on? What about like... So you can kind of get different views of how they would look and test them out. So that's the idea with this Click FX spawner that I have. Yeah, I hope that was helpful. Specifically, some of the other types of scripts like the time destroy, and I know I didn't talk about the FX auto destroy. It's a kind of a meaty script. And let me know if you want to know anything in particular. I'm going to make one more video about this on my on the FX sequence. I'm finally going to start doing that. The FX sequencer is kind of a madhouse pipe dream that I have. This is what it looks like. I showed it in the previous video on accident, but it does this weird thing where it like instantiates particles in a sequence of in a sequence. I know that sounds super vague. It's an FX sequencer. So you queue up these different things like left, right, up, delay, right, or yeah, left, up, delay, right. And it'll trigger these particle systems in that order, in that way, and with like certain criteria and things. So like times and that jazz. So we'll talk about this in the next one. We'll talk about the ridiculous amount of scripting that went into doing this. There's quite a bit here, and kind of some of the logic behind it and why it's useful. So yeah. I just talked for 50 minutes, and I'm really sorry this turned out this long. Hope it was helpful, and if you have any questions, like I said, leave them in the comments below. If I did anything weird or wrong, or you have feedback on the videos or anything like that, let me know. I'll address them, and yeah, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.